September 12, 2025. GIUK Gap, North Atlantic. The ocean is still, but beneath it, a shadow moves. A Russian Yasen-class submarine has closed within striking distance of a U.S. carrier group. Just 18 kilometers separate it from more than 5,000 sailors. One torpedo could cripple the fleet, ignite a wider conflict, and change the balance of power overnight. How close did it get, and who spotted it first? The GIUK Gap, stretching between Greenland, Iceland, and the United Kingdom, is more than just geography. It's the narrow doorway between Russia's northern bases and the open Atlantic, a choke point NATO has watched since the Cold War. Every submarine must pass through it, and that makes it the perfect place for Moscow to test its newest predator, the Yasen-class nuclear submarine. At 4:35 a.m., the stillness of the gap breaks. Aboard the Norwegian frigate Fridtjof Nansen, part of NATO's forward screen, a sonar operator stiffens. One faint, irregular ping slips against the current. He presses his headset tight. Something's here, moving fast. The report moves quickly up the chain, because if it is what they fear, a Russian Yasen-class submarine, the threat is enormous. 32 Kalibr missiles, each able to strike targets more than 1,500 kilometers away, a sprint speed of 32 knots, and worst of all, silence. Its acoustic signature is so low, it can slip beneath even NATO's most advanced sonar nets, almost unseen. And it's happened before. In 2023, a Yasen trailed the USS Connecticut for nearly 2 days before slipping away. A year later, unidentified acoustic traces in the Baltic forced NATO into a near alert, later confirmed as another Yasen. Each time, it showed how thin the margin really is. This time, the Norwegians don't wait. The contact is relayed immediately to the American destroyer USS Truxtun. The hunt is no longer theirs. It now belongs to the U.S. Navy, and the situation is about to escalate. September 12, 2025, 4:41 a.m. Deep under the GIUK Gap, the Yasen-class submarine Severodvinsk moves like a predator through dark water. At 280 meters, every sound matters. The control room is dim, lit by red lamps. Captain Ivan Petrov leans forward, whispering, "Silent running. Prepare tubes 1 through 4. Hands glide over consoles. Even footsteps are muted, as if the crew themselves know their breathing could betray them. The reactor's hum is steady, hidden in the ocean's heartbeat. 4:52 a.m. Above, a coded signal cuts across NATO's network. The Norwegians have passed on their detection. Inside the USS Truxtun, alarms don't ring, but the silence grows heavier. The report lands on the sonar desk. Lieutenant Sarah Jenkins presses her headset closer. A faint trace flashes across the waterfall display, then fades. "Captain, possible contact. 30 knots, bearing 065. For one long moment, the command deck is frozen. Commander Michael Hayes narrows his eyes, then snaps. Deploy drones. Now. Hatches open. 3 REMUS drones splash into the Atlantic, their sensors fanning out in all directions like a spreading web. And then, another pulse. Clearer this time. Jenkins whispers, almost to herself, "It's here." Down below, Petrov watches the displays with quiet confidence. He knows the Americans are hunting. He also knows the ocean favors the patient. With a flick of his hand, the Severodvinsk bleeds speed, slipping beneath the thermocline. To NATO's sensors, the contact blurs, then vanishes. 5 a.m. On the surface, jets roar into the night. F-35Cs thunder off the deck of the USS Harry S. Truman, their afterburners cutting streaks across the horizon. Pilots scan for periscopes, wakes, or heat traces, feeding every scrap of data back into the fleet's command net. But inside Truxtun's sonar room, Jenkins' screen flickers with ghosts. "It's like chasing smoke," she mutters. Operators hunch closer, tension rising. 5:12 a.m. The Severodvinsk eases into a canyon on the seafloor. The signal disappears completely. Drone operators stare at empty screens. The sea is quiet again, too quiet. Commander Hayes holds his fire, jaw tight. "No mistakes. Confirm before engagement." The North Atlantic falls silent again, but everyone knows silence doesn't mean safety. And then, nothing. The sub is gone. Or is it? Suddenly, the contact vanishes. How is it slipping through the sonar grids? Inside the Severodvinsk, Captain Ivan Petrov studied the tactical displays as sonar blips flickered like shadows. "Adjust ballast to 320 meters. Torpedo tubes 1 through 4 ready. Calibers on standby," he said calmly. Crew members moved efficiently, adjusting hydroplanes, checking reactor noise levels, and monitoring periscope angles. The MGK 600 Erdish sonar continued to track the faint hum of USS Truxtun's propellers, closing in at about 11.5 kilometers. The first shot was about to be fired. Everything came down to the next few seconds, and at 5:15 a.m., the first move came. A Type 65 torpedo slid silently into the cold Atlantic, aimed at Truxtun. On the destroyer's bridge, Lieutenant Sarah Jenkins noticed an abnormal spike on the sonar display. Her voice was tense. "Incoming torpedo! Bearing 065. 45, 48 knots. Alarm bells filled the ship. Commander Michael Hayes reacted immediately. Zigzag evasive maneuvers. Decoys in the water. Truxtun shuddered as it banked sharply, carving a turbulent wake at 28 knots. Minutes later, the U.S. fleet expanded its response. 3 REMUS 600 drones launched from Truxtun, spreading into a triangular formation. Each drone pinged passively, triangulating the faint subnoise. One drone's propeller, clipped by the torpedo's turbulence, let out a metallic clang, but the other 2 continued. Meanwhile, the Virginia-class submarine USS Colorado monitored deeper acoustic layers, feeding crucial data back to the fleet. Overhead, F-35C Lightning IIs circled, scanning with infrared sensors for any thermal signature, wake, or periscope. The torpedo's fate would decide everything. By 5:24 a.m., the first torpedo missed Truxtun by just 150 meters, erupting into a plume of icy spray. Sailors instinctively ducked, and sonar operators logged every echo. The sub had forced the fleet to react, testing their readiness. Severodvinsk then slipped silently beneath the thermocline at 350 meters, disappearing into a temporary sonar blind spot. Petrov leaned over the console, whispering, "They think we're gone. Patience is everything." The drones lost direct contact, leaving only faint echoes to hint at the sub's position. 05:35 a.m. Truxtun deployed decoy acoustic targets, floating noisemakers to confuse the sub's sensors. A secondary torpedo fired by Severodvinsk locked onto a decoy and detonated harmlessly mid-water. Relief and frustration mixed on the sub as the crew felt the echo of the explosion reverberate through the hull. Drone operators then detected subtle turbulence along the ocean floor, evidence the sub was navigating a canyon corridor. Lieutenant Jenkins called out, "Ghost on our grid, bearing 073, 12 knots." Commander Hayes responded calmly, "All units, lock bearings and maintain stealth. No shots unless confirmed." The next strike could be real or a feint. A moment later, Severodvinsk fired a Kalibr cruise missile at a phantom target deployed as part of a U.S. electronic warfare exercise. The missile splashed into the cold Atlantic, detonating safely far from the fleet. Overhead, F-35Cs recorded thermal disturbances as the missile entered the water. The sub had tested the fleet's responses without revealing its exact location. Petrov then ordered a rapid maneuver along the seabed canyon, listening to hydrophones picking up multiple propellers, 2 drones and 1 destroyer. "Keep course. Let them exhaust their assets first," he said. The sub moved silently, threading through narrow underwater corridors. The U.S. fleet coordinated sonar pings from hull-mounted systems, drones, and the Virginia-class sub. The tension peaked as another torpedo narrowly missed USS Nicholas, slicing past just 200 meters aft and sending a column of water exploding along the hull. At the same time, one of the REMUS drones took a hit from the turbulence, the metallic clang echoing sharply through the control room. Through it all, passive sonar picked up faint wake patterns, finally revealing Severodvinsk gliding just 15 meters below the thermocline. But the chess game was shifting. Petrov called off offensive actions. "U.S. drones triangulated us too accurately. Stealth and escape via canyon route only," he instructed. The tension in the control rooms was palpable. Hayes' voice came over the comms, steady but firm. "Hold fire. Maintain triangulation. Visual confirmation only." A few seconds of silence passed before Jenkins murmured, "The ghost. It's slowing. Bearings are steady." Across the Atlantic, deep inside Severodvinsk, Petrov's voice was calm but measured. "They see shadows, not the whole picture. Patience wins." The hunt was reaching its breaking point. 6:20 a.m. The fleet tightened formation. sonobuoys were deployed systematically along the grid, and drones pinged in sequence, mapping 3-dimensional underwater corridors. Thermal and sonar overlays converged, leaving Severodvinsk with increasingly limited escape options. Then, the sub's silhouette briefly appeared on composite sonar, a ghost caught between stealth and detection. On Truxtun, sonar operators held their breath. Below, Petrov's crew gripped consoles in silence. Every second could decide whether a single mistake triggered catastrophe. The battle was no longer just a test of weapons. It was a contest of nerves and strategy. The U.S. fleet relied on overlapping sensors, unmanned drones, and coordination between surface ships and submarines. The Severodvinsk countered with precision, terrain exploitation, and acoustic stealth. Minutes stretched like hours. The Aegis radar scanned the surface. REMUS drones traced faint underwater trails, and F-35 pilots circled overhead, infrared eyes searching for even a hint of disturbance. Every sonar ping, every maneuver, every breath counted. And now came the decisive moment. By 6:25 a.m., the North Atlantic seemed to hold its breath. Severodvinsk's faint signature appeared and vanished on sonar, teetering between detection and stealth. Crew and operators alike knew the danger was real. One wrong move could ignite a catastrophic engagement. Severodvinsk was on the edge. Would it slip through the U.S. net or be forced to surface under the gaze of hundreds of trained sailors and a swarm of drones? The ocean seemed to hold its breath. The Yasen-class submarine moved slowly, deliberately, threading through deep underwater corridors, hydrophones straining to pick up every whisper from above. Petrov's voice was calm but commanding, a steady anchor against the tension. Maintain minimal noise. Decoys ready. Only surface if forced. The crew executed with robotic precision, deploying noise generators and sheets of foil chaff that glittered faintly under the sub's internal lights. Each decoy sent ripples through the surrounding waters, tiny blips that might mislead the fleet's sensors. But the combined American systems, hull-mounted sonar, 3 REMUS 600 drones, and F-35C infrared scanning, worked in tandem, cross-referencing every anomaly. The silence wouldn't last forever. 6:40 a.m. Minutes stretched into an eternity as the sub zigzagged beneath the thermocline, careful not to create turbulence large enough to betray its position. Petrov monitored every blip, every irregular echo. They are converging, he whispered. Do not surface. Hold. In the command room, the low hum of the nuclear reactor was the only background noise, punctuated by the occasional click of controls or a sonar ping from the drone network outside. The crew moved like shadows, each hand and eye trained for instant reaction, knowing that one miscalculation could expose them. But the Americans were already closing the noose. On the surface, the U.S. fleet had settled into an almost perfect cordon. USS Truxtun and the accompanying frigates held positions that maximized sonar coverage and allowed for rapid reaction. Commander Hayes' voice cut through the tense communications lines. All units converge on triangulated sub. Warning shots only. Maintain formation. The order carried both restraint and menace, a reminder that they were prepared to escalate if necessary. From above, the F-35Cs circled methodically, their thermal cameras sweeping the surface for the faintest signs of periscopes or heat signatures rising from the dark waters below. The standoff was seconds from breaking. The first warning shot from Truxtun's deck-mounted Mk-46 torpedoes rippled through the ocean. Detonating nearly 500 meters from Severodvinsk, the explosions transmitted through the hull like distant thunder. Petrov immediately ordered a speed reduction, the sub tilting slightly as ballast adjusted to compensate. The crew felt every vibration, every echo, a constant reminder of their vulnerability. Even the decoys had become a double-edged sword. While they created distractions, they also revealed anomalies to the Americans, tightening the noose. Every maneuver narrowed the odds of survival. Severodvinsk attempted evasive maneuvers along a canyoned seabed, hydrophones tracing the movements of 2 REMUS drones and the destroyer above. Petrov's calculations were precise. Every course correction, every change in depth, designed to stay just below the radar of active sensors while exploiting the natural acoustic distortions of the thermocline. His voice was low but unyielding. Shadows, not shapes. They see shadows, not the whole picture. Patience wins. The crew absorbed the tension silently, muscles coiled, every heartbeat amplified by the stress of the hunt. The chase was reaching a breaking point. On Truxtun, Lieutenant Jenkins kept her eyes glued to the sonar displays, following faint, irregular wake patterns. Her hands danced across the console, filtering echoes, triangulating every movement. Bearing 073, speed 12 knots, she murmured, passing the information to Commander Hayes. The bridge held a taut, anticipatory silence, broken only by the soft, urgent hum of communications across the fleet. Overhead, infrared feeds flickered as the F-35Cs recorded even minor surface disturbances, feeding data back to the command center. As time went by, Severodvinsk's options dwindled. The canyon route that had seemed promising now intersected with multiple sonar grids. Every maneuver risked detection, yet surfacing meant vulnerability. Petrov's decision was deliberate, slow, measured, and precise. He ordered the final decoys deployed, folding them quietly into the ocean currents to create fleeting, misleading acoustic signatures. The sub's hull creaked subtly under the pressure changes, an almost imperceptible reminder of the depths they navigated. The question was no longer if, but when. Finally, at 7:05, Severodvinsk broke the surface, her dark hull cutting a cold silhouette against the gray Atlantic. Sensors across the fleet locked on instantly, drones pinged, thermal cameras captured the heat differential, and deck-mounted guns on the destroyer and frigates trained without a second's hesitation. Lieutenant Jenkins exhaled softly, the tension breaking in her voice. Finally visible, there she is. Relief rippled through the bridge, though tempered by the knowledge that the sub could still react in dangerous ways. Concrete numbers framed the scale of the encounter. 1 Yasen-class sub had been neutralized in terms of operational stealth, no U.S. vessels suffered damage, and 2 torpedo near misses had been narrowly avoided. Severodvinsk carried a crew of 90, while Truxtun's 350 sailors manned sonar, weapons, and navigation systems in a coordinated ballet. The fleet's assets, 3 drones, 2 frigates, a destroyer, 2 F-35Cs, and a Virginia-class sub providing acoustic support, worked together seamlessly to achieve what years of training demanded. Yet every statistic masked how close they had come to disaster. Lieutenant Jenkins shared a brief, relieved grin with the sonar tech beside her, whispering, "Ghost hunting finally paid off." On Severodvinsk, Captain Petrov logged in the Russian Navy report with a calm voice belying the strain. Mission compromised, surface exposure unavoidable, enemy detection superior, withdrawal ordered. Crew members' hands relaxed marginally on their consoles, but eyes remained vigilant, scanning the deep and the sky for any unexpected movement. Even as the sub retreated north toward Russian territorial waters, the U.S. fleet remained at high alert. Every sensor, every drone, every crew member stayed sharp, aware that the encounter could easily have ended differently. Commander Hayes' voice over the comms reminded the fleet of the stakes. All units maintain alert. The encounter is over, but vigilance is mandatory. The GIUK Gap remains contested. But for how long would over stay true? For both sides, the outcome was a mixture of relief and lingering tension. Severodvinsk had tested the U.S. fleet's responses and lived to report the encounter, yet the Americans had demonstrated their ability to detect and respond to one of Russia's most advanced nuclear submarines. The waters of the North Atlantic, cold and seemingly silent, had become the stage for a high-stakes game of shadow and sensor, where patience, precision, and nerves of steel dictated survival. The GIUK Gap, a narrow but vital corridor, had once again proven its strategic significance. Above the waves, the F-35Cs continued to sweep the horizon, infrared feeds flickering across the bridge displays. Drones pinged methodically, mapping every acoustic anomaly. On board Truxtun, sailors exchanged brief glances and subtle nods, the shared understanding clear. A near catastrophe had been averted by preparation, coordination, and split-second decisions. On Severodvinsk, the crew knew the sub had survived this time, but the encounter would be analyzed for months, every maneuver scrutinized for lessons learned. By 7:15, the situation had stabilized. The sub was visible on surface radar, moving steadily north. The U.S. fleet gradually relaxed formations, though sensors remained active, confirming no further hostile action. The GIUK Gap once again held its tense, silent dominion over the North Atlantic, a corridor where every shadow could conceal both danger and opportunity. Both crews understood the fragile balance of undersea warfare, the difference between life and destruction often measured in meters, seconds, and the subtle shifts of sonar echoes. The encounter reverberated through NATO's entire command structure. SHAPE, the Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers Europe in Mons, Belgium, convened emergency briefings, analyzing every ping, wake, and maneuver. Allied naval commands from the UK's Northwood headquarters to Norway's Naval Operations Command reviewed patrol protocols in the GIUK Gap, coordinating updated schedules for submarines, surface vessels, and maritime patrol aircraft. NATO recognized that the region, already a critical choke point for Atlantic access, required tighter integration between undersea surveillance, electronic warfare, and rapid response strike assets. New patrol corridors were mapped, drones reassigned, and acoustic monitoring stations in Iceland and the Faroe Islands upgraded to detect even the faintest disturbances beneath the waves. For the Russian Northern Fleet, the forced surfacing of Severodvinsk was a stark blow to operational credibility. What had been a carefully orchestrated stealth exercise ended in exposure, with the sub fully tracked by U.S. and Allied assets. Internal reports highlighted lapses in acoustic deception, underestimating the responsiveness of U.S. anti-submarine tactics. Petrov's crew felt the weight of surveillance and the consequences of misjudging enemy capabilities, reinforcing the reality that even the most advanced Yasen-class subs were not invisible. Morale among the fleet wavered, tempered by the knowledge that NATO's reach and coordination could extend deep into the North Atlantic. On the American side, the episode confirmed the effectiveness of multi-domain coordination. The U.S. Second Fleet, headquartered at Naval Station Norfolk, Virginia, and the Atlantic Command Center in Norfolk, coordinated real-time data from Truxtun, drones, and the Virginia-class sub, proving the value of joint sensor networks. Sailors celebrated quietly, but the higher echelons of command used the encounter as a learning tool. Training simulations were updated, contingency protocols refined, and the integration of manned and unmanned assets emphasized as essential for future GIUK Gap operations. Yet the deeper, quieter lesson was less tangible. The North Atlantic may appear tranquil, but beneath the waves, every shadow could conceal a deadly adversary. For NATO and the Russian Navy alike, the Severodvinsk episode underscored that vigilance, patience, and precision are as critical as technology. The GIUK Gap remained a contested, unpredictable corridor, a place where silence hides danger, and every ping could be the prelude to confrontation. The GIUK Gap trembled, but the U.S. Navy held its ground. Severodvinsk tested every sonar ping, every drone, every tactic, yet American skill and technology prevailed. One wrong move from the sub could have spelled disaster, but the fleet's precision proved just how dominant U.S. naval power can be. Across NATO command centers, from Brussels to Norfolk, the message was clear: the Atlantic is under watch, and any challenger faces a response measured, relentless, and near perfect. The Russian Northern Fleet learned that even the most advanced submarine cannot escape the combined reach of American ships, drones, and eyes in the sky. If this undersea duel kept your heart racing, hit like and subscribe. The ocean always hides secrets, and the next military confrontation may already be waiting.